Percy Shelley, considered one of the greatest romantic poets of all time. What did he have to say about diet? And specifically, what did he have to say about a vegetable based diet? Let's take a look. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Threpticon. Today, we're going to talk about Percy Shelley. I've titled this presentation Meat as the Origin of All Ills, which is what Shelley claims. Who was Percy Shelley? He was born in 1792 in England. He married twice, the second time to Mary Godwin, later Mary Shelley, who was the author of Frankenstein. He's today considered one of the greatest romantic poets. At the time, he was fairly unknown. He was an extremely radical thinker politically, and he was a free thinker. He was an atheist. He wrote basically in opposition to all forms of government. I mean, he sort of took up a lot of causes. In vegetarianism, proto-vegetarianism being one of them. He was definitely inspiring for what became vegetarianism, because that word doesn't exist until 1847, and he died before then. He was the author of several poetical works. One of my favorites, titled Prometheus Unbound, related to this vegetarian theme, but several other poems. Ozymandias, that's one of the most famous poems. And then a few plays. I believe one of them is titled The Cenci, about sort of historical theme. And then several essays. Among the essays, there's one titled A Vindication of Natural Diet, in which he espouses his vegetable diet beliefs. And then he died tragically before he turned 30 in 1822 from a shipwreck in the Ligurian Sea, I believe, or somewhere off the coast of Italy. So he was influenced in terms of vegetarianism, definitely by a man named John Frank Newton, who he kind of quotes several times and reinterprets in his essay that we'll see. Also, his friend William Lamb sort of became interested in this vegetable diet at the same time. And several of his friends, I mean, he was friends with Lord Byron. I think he even influenced him to briefly, maybe just for a few days, try it out. Definitely influenced by Enlightenment, sort of echoes of especially the English Enlightenment, but also the French Enlightenment. Things like Rousseau, ideas about nature. And he was also influenced by scientific and naturalistic observations, world travelers, people talking about different ecosystems and diets around the world, and by, once again, his radical ideas, nudism, free love, etc., etc. He believed in it. I mean, he sort of lived these ideals. Let's take a look at A Vindication of Natural Diet. So it was inspired by John Frank Newton's essay, The Return to Nature, or A Defense of the Vegetable Regime, with some account of an experiment made during the last 3 or 4 years in the author's family. The main thesis, if I were to describe this essay in one sentence, it would be meat eating is the origin of all ills of society. Tyranny, disease, corruption, poverty, they all stem from this issue, this problem. So he begins the essay with somewhat of an appeal to nature. He says, I hold that the depravity of the physical and moral nature of man originated in his unnatural habits of life. That's the first sentence. Then he gives an interpretation of the Prometheus myth, right? So Prometheus was the first human who had the use of fire, right? He steals fire from the gods, and he's the first one to kill animals. And he's the beginning of meat eating, and this is sort of the origin of humanity's suffering. One of his arguments in favor of the vegetable diet is comparative anatomy. He says, comparative anatomy teaches us that man resembles frugivorous animals in everything and carnivorous in nothing. He makes several bold claims about the vegetable diet. Let's take a look. There is no disease, bodily or mental, which adoption of vegetable diet and pure water has not infallibly mitigated, whether the experiment has been fairly tried. Debility, wherever the experiment has been fairly tried, debility is gradually converted into strength, disease into healthfulness, madness in all its hideous variety, from the ravings of the fettered maniac to the uncountable irrationalities of ill temper, that make a hell of domestic life into a calm and considerate evenness of temper that alone might offer a certain pledge of the future moral reformation of society. So I think that last sentence really hits the nail on the head. Moral reformation of society. That's what Shelley's interested in. That's what he believes this type of diet will do. I mean, he was doing this for these intellectual reasons. And then he says that one will get habituated to the taste of the diet and that they provide simple pleasures, sort of your taste buds will change. He said the pleasure of taste to be derived from a dinner of potatoes, beans, peas, turnips, lettuce, with a dessert of apples, gooseberries, strawberries, currants, raspberries, and in winter oranges, apples, and pears, is far greater than is supposed. Sort of describing some foods that people in England can eat, right? And he also claims that this way of eating will restore the trade balance in England, that they don't have to rely on foreign spices and foreign meats and so on, that they can cultivate in their gardens basically everything they need to eat. And then he provides 2 rules for life. So his natural diet isn't only meat-free, it's also alcohol-free. So he says that never take any substance into the stomach that once had life, and drink no liquid but water restored to its original purity by distillation. I find the first quote fascinating because he says that had life as if plants don't have life, which is an interesting thing to say. It's not true. I know what he means. Never take any substance in the stomach that once was an animal. It was a living animal. So this is an interesting word choice here. And then there's an appendix to this edition that lists several long-lived meat abstainers, just to show that, the results of this kind of diet. Though it's not very credible, especially the first fellow here, Old Parr. He was an Englishman who supposedly lived 152 years, which, is a dubious claim. But some of these figures should be looked into. Going to be very interesting. So here's my work cited here. So with that, thank everyone for watching. And what do you think? Is there a link between political tyranny and meat eating? Let me know in the comments below. All right. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.